from the roundabout. Now take the third exit from the roundabout. Please turn left in 300 yards onto A329, then take the second exit from the roundabout.
Homeless. The European Union Commissioner for Home Affairs,
Now turn left.
400 unaccompanied minors to be housed on the island. The European Union has called for an emergency meeting with Britain over its post-Brexit bill that cuts across a previous deal. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she was very concerned about London's intention to breach the withdrawal agreement. The British government acknowledges that the bill breaches international law. Western diplomats have stationed themselves in the apartment.
Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
West. Ms. Alexievich has accused the authorities of terrorizing their own people and insisted she'll not be forced into exile. The authors claim her opposition leaders still crouch. The Houthi rebels in Yemen say they've had to suspend all UN and other aid agency flights to the capital Sana'a on account of a shortage of fuel. The rebels are fighting a Saudi-led coalition that only permits humanitarian flights to come and go from the airport. The court in Germany has ruled that the former chief executive of Volkswagen must stand trial for his part in the car manufacturer's diesel's emissions scandal. The court in the city of...
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in half a mile.
Commercial fraud. And Malaysia, the world's second largest producer of palm oil, is turning to prison itself recovering drug addicts to help solve a severe labour shortage exacerbated by the pandemic. The industry is heavily dependent on migrant workers from Indonesia, India and Bangladesh, but lockdown policies have restricted travel.
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A3095. Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
What the row is about, and that's whether it makes the trade deal more or less likely. Two British companies with very different views on the UK's EU departure will tell us how they're preparing for life with or without an agreement. Also this half hour, could food packaging made out of seaweed replace plastic?
Plastic has its merits, but I think for short shelf life and instant consumption, which is such a huge part of the market, it just doesn't really make sense.
And would you really want someone to watch a live stream of your date? Well, apparently people do, and it's become big business. We'll explain. When any relationship comes to an end,
please take the third exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A3095.
in Union,
Now take the third exit from the roundabout.
it's a long and complex story. Here's a quick catch-up. The UK left the EU earlier this year, but remains bound by its regulations until the end of December as part of a transition period, a kind of departure package. Discussions are currently taking place about potential UK-EU trade deal and other aspects of what's called the future relationship. There doesn't seem to have been much progress on the main sticking points for a few months. Today, the UK government published a proposed piece of domestic legislation, a rather dull-sounding internal markets bill, but it's gone down very badly in capitals across Europe. The bill says that UK ministers will have powers over government financial support for businesses in Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, and they'll be able to make regulations and rules about goods in Northern Ireland. But this is why it is controversial, because under the UK-EU divorce deal, Northern Ireland still has to follow elements of the custom code laid down by the European Union. Here's the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson speaking in Parliament.
We need a legal safety net to protect our country against it.
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in half a mile.
To border down the Irish Sea in a way that I believe, and I think members around the House believe, would be prejudicial to the interests of the Good Friday Agreement and prejudicial to the interests of peace in our country.
A member of the UK government has already said the Internal Markets Bill will break international law in a specific and limited way. The head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has said the UK move undermines trust at a time when the trade talks are taking place. This was the reaction of the Irish Prime Minister, Taoiseach Micheál Martin.
Meaningful negotiations can only proceed on the basis of mutual trust.
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A3095.
Treaty and incorporated into domestic law do not build trust.
Well, I've been talking to Victoria Hewson, who analyses regulations at the Institute of Economic Affairs, a pro-free market think tank.
Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
An market bill is necessary because a lot of the things that mean that goods can be sold and services can be provided all across the United Kingdom have actually, for the last few decades, relied on EU law because we were all part of the single market. Now, certain powers about, say, for example, food and agriculture regulation are held by the devolved governments in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. We need to make sure that we don't have trade barriers arising between England and Scotland.
Lane restriction ahead on A331.
And Ireland.
And so because the British government wants ministers to have powers to make regulations about goods and state aid, helping companies in Northern Ireland, that is why the government has said that this bill, if passed by Parliament, would break the
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A3095.
Last year, Northern Ireland was given
Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
trade border on the land border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Unfortunately for unionists, that meant that a lot of the formalities and potential tariffs that could apply to goods trade would therefore have to happen on trade across the Irish Sea between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Also, however, those arrangements in the withdrawal agreement were set out at a really very high level for such complicated arrangements about customs and regulations. So there was an ongoing process, it's still going on now, with a joint committee between the UK and the EU to try and work out exactly how to implement that. So what the UK is really doing in this.
Please take the first exit from the roundabout in half a mile.
If that joint committee can't reach agreement on certain matters.
So is this the British government saying that the agreement that was signed less than a year ago?
Please take the first exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A3095. Now take the first exit from the roundabout.
Digesting it, it seems to me there's only one element where the government is sort of actively saying we're not going to be bound by this anymore, we'll apply this the way we see fit, and that's the bit about state aid, so about potential application of
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in half a mile.
saying we want to have some protection here in case the EU adopts what we consider to be an untenable position that would be too disadvantageous for Northern Ireland. And this is where they've said that notwithstanding what's.
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A3095. Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
There's one particular provision of the main body of the withdrawal agreement that says that, in effect, everything that's agreed in the withdrawal agreement and the protocol has to take precedence in your national law. And what the UK government is proposing to do in this bill is to say, notwithstanding this particular article of the withdrawal agreement, we are legislating this, and if necessary, we're going to override what's in the protocol. So at a very high level, that's really where the breach is by saying we're not going to be bound by the so-called direct effect of this agreement.
Victoria Houston. Well, the UK has said that a trade deal needs to be agreed by mid-October, otherwise commerce between the UK and the EU will take place under rules set by the World Trade Organization, with the introduction of trade tariffs on products. I've been talking to two businesses in the south of England about what a trade deal, or lack of one, might mean for them. Andrew Varga runs C2, which makes safety valves. He was a...
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in half a mile.
Quarter of Britain's exit from the EU. First, here's Simon.
I'm looking forward to the end of the transition period and looking forward to be completely free from the shackles of the EU that have held businesses like ours back.
Andrew, you didn't want Brexit to happen. Are you still concerned?
Yes, it's had a huge impact on us. It's already impacted us commercially in running costs now.
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A3095.
On our operations, whichever direction we come at it, operation.
Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
Simon, what about your businesses? Have you perhaps seen a pickup in orders as the UK heads towards the end of the transition period?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really sorry to hear that Andrew's suffering a little bit over this, because we're still exporting away, whether it's into Europe or outside Europe, because at the moment we're still in the EU and the same conditions are on.
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A3095.
The so-called no deal, which really doesn't mean no deal, we're confident that we'll still be able to trade.
Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
Market. And as far as the business goes at the moment, we're very busy. But the biggest threat to the business is COVID-19. You know, that's got far more of a damaging impact than leaving the EU will ever have.
It's unclear whether there will or won't be a UK-EU trade deal which would kick in at the end of the transition period at the end of this year. Andrew, would a trade deal help solve some of the problems that you've been experiencing?
It depends on the nature of the deal. If the deal included what's called diagonal accumulation, so that UK goods were classed as EU goods for the EU free trade agreements, that would definitely help. But even if you have a free trade deal, you still have to have import-export documentation, and that adds onerous cost to both us and our customers. So it's a question of marginal improvements. Yes, it would help, but it's not going to solve the problems. It's still going to be easier for our customers to buy from our competitors in the EU. It's not going to compensate for what the UK is losing in the EU.
Simon, when it comes to the possibility of a UK-EU trade deal, what's your view on whether there ought to be one or not?
Well, having a free trade deal is preferable, but we shouldn't have to sell the family silver to get the free trade deal. We've got to remember that the deficit that we have in our trade with the EU is around about 100 billion a year. So we buy much more than we sell, and you know, the regulatory burden that businesses have had has held business back. Don't need a free trade deal to trade. The free trade deal, you know, gets rid of some of the barriers.
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in half a mile.
Your products that you sell into the European Union will be more expensive because they'll be subject to trade.
That's right. If there is a tariff, if we go on to WTO rules, for a start, if both parties agree to work on a future trade deal, you can assume zero tariffs. But even if tariffs come in, just look at the trade deficit. We would rake in a fortune in the tariffs that we had for imports, and more than compensate the country for any increase.
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A321.
But the cost of export is not just in the tariffs, it's in the administration. That's where this HMRC estimate around about 17 billion cost to UK business per annum for managing the export documentation and export handling. These are big negatives.
I completely disagree, Andrew. We've been in a protectionist bloc since we joined the EU. That's exactly what it is. It's a protectionist bloc. And we've become a little bit lazy. I don't mean you personally, of course, but British business is...
Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
New manufacturing processes rather than relying on cheap labour, which has been, a big downward driver of being inside the EU.
Andrew,
Please take the third exit from the roundabout in half a mile.
UK, do you think that would mean for your sales?
In our particular market, the tariff will be about 2.2%, assuming that the EU doesn't impose punitive tariffs. It would be about 2.2%, which would not have a huge impact on our business. What will have a huge impact on our business is having to cope with all the import-export formalities and the fact that our goods will no longer be of EU origin.
Andrew Varga and Simon Boyd there with two very different views from British exporters. I wonder if they're still debating. Anyway, what about businesses from the European Union? The German manufacturer Miele makes high-end domestic appliances, and all of the products that it sells in the UK are imported. John Pickering is the head of the company in the UK.
Like many businesses, we're preparing for a good year next year, but with some contingencies. The reality is that although there's uncertainty, the UK business has been a good business for us historically, and we expect that to continue, further growth opportunities next year. So we're planning contingencies around our supply chain. We're eagerly awaiting more information in terms of any other processes, as an example, any other administration that we need to take part in. But as I say, it's not.
Please take the third exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto the meadows.
Are all of the products you sell in the UK imported from Germany?
Now take the third exit from the roundabout.
Is imported.
All from Germany or elsewhere?
No, not all from Germany. There are a number of other markets, but Germany is an important part of our supply base.
If there is no trade deal, what could it mean, do you think, for the paperwork, which you touched on before, but also potential trade tariffs on your products, and what would that mean?
Construction zone ahead on A327.
Reality is it's unclear what's going to happen on trade terms, tariffs or taxes. So we're waiting on the government to clarify its position. I guess we'll wait to see in the coming weeks on that basis. The reality is we will only pass on pricing if absolutely necessary. So we have a significant focus on something we call Immer Besser in Miele, which is about forever better, which is ongoing improvement. So within the efficiencies we find in the business, we'll balance any incremental costs, but fundamentally the ultimate decisions will be based on the outcome in the year to go and the final Brexit agreement, I guess, that's put in place.
So if there was, for example, a 3% tariff on washing machines imported from the European Union into the UK, you wouldn't necessarily put the cost of the product in the shops up by 3% or whatever?
Honestly, on a topic like that, we would be guided by government legislation and also taking close advice from the industry association that we're part of, called AMDIA, who are the trade association for appliance manufacturers, who are also working closely with government on these topics.
It doesn't sound that then, but correct me if I'm wrong, that a trade deal is essential in your view.
That's an interesting one. I mean, a deal on its own can have impacts in many different ways. If we touch on the supply of goods and the administration around it, that's one thing to manage. The impact on consumer confidence could be another. We've already seen what's happened this year with COVID, which needs no further explanation now, and the impact on industries that are important to us, like the leisure industry for our professional business, consumer confidence for the housing market, as you can imagine, with replacement and new appliances as well. So I think there's more to it than just the rigour around the logistics and the supply. Actually, the bigger impact can be what happens to the economy and the consumer confidence and the knock-on impact to important partners of ours.
John Pickering there of Miele. Well, let's talk to Russ Mould of the brokers AJ Bell. Hi, Russ.
Hello, Rob.
Has the row between the UK and the EU had any impact on stock or currency markets today?
Currency markets, definitely. The pound is trying to forge a bit of a rally, but it's still having to work very hard to hang on to the $1.30 mark and €1.10 mark. So sterling under pressure. It's very much the lightning rod for how markets feel about it. The more uncertain.
Please take the first exit from the roundabout in half a mile.
M8, which owns the high-end brands like Christian Dior and Louis Vuitton, is supposed to be buying the jewellery brand Tiffany, but the deal is about to collapse. Why is that?
There are several reasons. One, luxury goods demand worldwide has fallen because of the pandemic, because even the super rich are being very careful with their money and have been under lockdown as well. Secondly, the French company is very reluctant now to buy an American one because of...
Please take the first exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A331.
Drag the whole process on for nearly...
Now take the first exit from the roundabout.
Flat, so its shareholders don't seem too unhappy. Tiffany shareholders understandably less pleased. The shares down around 10%, and Tiffany management are actually threatening to sue for breach of contract.
So I think we're going to hear quite a bit more about this one.
I think this one's going to run and run.
Yeah, let's talk about the UK pharmaceutical giant AstraZeneca. It has said it is pausing its vaccine trial into a coronavirus vaccine. What impact has this had on the company's shares?
Well, the shares are down 2%. I mean, they have had a fantastic run, partly because of hopes for the vaccine development with the university.
Please take the first exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A331, then keep to the right. Now take the first exit from the roundabout.
All's to make sure that there are no rogue results here, so they're still staying business as normal, phase 3 trial, hopefully full steam ahead for a vaccine next year.
Please keep to the right in 90 yards onto A331. Now keep to the right.
Yeah, when EasyJet started this trend.
Please keep to the left in 200 yards or A325, then take the third exit from the roundabout. Now keep to the left. Now take the third exit from the roundabout.
Still finding life extremely tough. Ryanair shares actually flat today, but EasyJet's down nearly 4%.
Thank you as always, Ross Mulbear from AJ Bell. In recent years, there's been a push to reduce the amount of plastic that people use once and then throw away. Pictures of sea life killed by drinking straws.
Now take the first exit from the roundabout.
Highly with something else. Well, there is emerging evidence that the pandemic may reverse that trend, but companies are still looking at alternative materials, and single-use biodegradable packaging is increasingly available. The firm not
Now take the first exit from the roundabout.
Lise Honsinger is the co-founder of the company.
We are using extract from seaweed, from brown seaweed specifically, and also from other plant materials that we mix together, and we turn it into a completely natural material, which is not a plastic. It's a very different substance, but it involves essentially basic chemistry, organic chemistry, and no nasty chemicals in the process, which makes it quite different to the other biomaterials out there.
So it's a specific type of seaweed that you use, and where in the world do you get it from?
Brown seaweed itself grows all over the world, in mostly temperate regions, so it's a fantastic substrate to be using because it's massively abundant and very easy to find. We have 3 key product lines, and those are a flexible packaging for liquids. Then we have a coating of our material onto paperboard to give it grease-proofing and water resistance. And we are now developing a third product line, which is just a film in itself. I think the key with these things is to understand that because it's a natural material forming the packaging, it isn't quite the same as plastic and has shelf life constraints of its own. So therefore we really focus on the takeaway markets, the food to go, the instant consumption markets, and kind of give our whole business overview,
Please keep to the left in half a mile, then take the second exit from the roundabout.
Do you focus mainly on the takeaway market because there is a limited shelf life of these products? Because they are from an organic material, do they begin to break down after a certain period of time?
Yes, exactly. So it's not break down so much as the microbial count might go up over time, just like it would on a piece of food. But we focused on takeaway because it was the immediately obvious market for our first product, which is the flexible packaging for liquids. So we've done some work with Hellmann's on sauces there, so trialing sauce sachets, and in other situations, more like running events, we've replaced the water bottles used for instant consumption there. But it's not just limited to takeaway, and whilst we started on the food space, we are now looking at other applications, especially for the films, where it can just replace standard packaging for things like screw packet.
Please keep to the left in 300 yards onto A325, then take the second exit from the roundabout.
A liquid into it. What is the risk that the packaging kind of turns bad before the product inside does?
Well, there isn't a risk that should happen, in the sense that everything we do is fully tested, so we end up with a shelf life.
Now keep to the left.
Whoever we're working with for those contents to have the correct shelf life. So when we've done the helmet sauce sachets, we actually chose for the trial a very conservative.
Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
We test normal shelf life for all food products. We don't think this is a solution to everything. There is going to be a wide sort of selection of different materials in the future that are used for different situations. So we wouldn't really use our product for something that is going to sit on a shelf for 2 years. You know, that's really plastics world. We're not going to be sitting on a shelf for 2 years. But in terms of the actual liquids that go inside, really we can do a very wide range. We always suggest testing first, but we're not really constrained by typical things like pH. We're not constrained by heat either. So, you know, our product is heat stable, so we could technically put hot things inside it if we needed to.
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto A327.
I'm on that.
I think natural packaging really does have a limitation on that, and it's not going to be something that's sitting on the shelf for 2 years. That's not really.
Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
If you've been on a dating app recently, you may well have had a video date. With lockdown making normal in-person dates difficult, potential couples have turned to video calls instead. But another trend that's emerging, particularly in America, is to make these live video dates public online, so strangers can watch and leave comments on how you're doing. So are these daters looking for love or just attention? Google Shaw reports.
We meet a lot of models, and they just turn out to be like cocky.
I don't portray that. Maybe I may have portrayed that, but
you are listening in on a video date taking place on Instagram, but don't feel awkward. The participants know people are eavesdropping. Ursula Makowska is a fashion blogger in New York. She felt she was getting nowhere with dating apps, so let her friends set up live dates like this for her. She says it's been worth it to get the audience feedback.
They can actually see the genuine connection.
Please take the second exit from the roundabout in 200 yards onto A327. Now take the second exit from the roundabout.
They're not, you know, going for the same guy. Oh my God, he's tall and, you know, works in finance.
Ursula used Instagram to create her own dating show, but there are popular apps in America now designed specifically for live dating. The biggest is called Meet Me. The platform hosts thousands of dates every day and attracts millions of viewers from around the world who can enjoy moments like this.
I just got the new iPhone 11 2 days ago, and every time I turn my phone on, a message on the screen will pop up, basically telling me that if I want my phone fixed, I must have you in my contact list.
Please take the first exit from the roundabout in half a mile.
But are daters genuinely looking for love, or are they looking for attention? I spoke with Jeff Cook, CEO of the Meet Group, which owns Meet Me and a suite of other live dating apps.
I certainly believe daters no longer have the risk appetite for meeting many different people in person based on something as shallow as a right swipe and a handful of text messages.
Is there a danger that when you make dating?
Please take the first exit from the roundabout in 300 yards onto Templar Avenue.
There's always a danger of having too much choice. You know that?
Now take the first exit from the roundabout.
Dating apps, if there's so much choice that you don't settle down and you always feel like there's someone else out there. We actually think that live streaming video helps with that by really emphasizing their personalities.
Question for you. Do you like to travel? And if so, where's your favorite place to go?
Oh yeah, I love traveling.
That report from Google Shaw. Well, that's about it for this World Business Report. Today's producers were Will Bain and Farian.
In 300 yards, you will reach your destination. Your destination is on the right.
This is the BBC World Service, and on this week's assignment...
Alcohol's one of our favourite drugs. It's also said to be one of our biggest killers. So the experiment to ban it outright in South Africa for 4 months this year may have lessons for us all. What is the verdict from the townships?
Journeys to the heart of the story. Thursday at 14 and 19 GMT. And in 60 minutes, it's OS with Nuala McGovern. We remember